Crazy stuff, my
Well,
man.
the Colts had kind of a good win last week. Man, shocked a lot of people, knocking off Kansas City. A big-time win, a big way to get things started, a big way to get momentum started, to really kickstart a team that had kind of been, spinning in the mud, I guess you'd say.
Right. And it's huge to get that win, not only for the standings, but as you said, like psychologically, mentally, to come back and prove that you're a much better team than the product you put out there those first two games, and to prove it to yourself, the city, the fan base, but also the rest of the NFL. We can beat a marquee opponent, and we're much better than 0-1-1 at the time. So now they're 1-1-1, and feel like they kind of found their footing to a degree. But that being said, I mean, you guys watched the game. I watched the game. I mean, Kansas City didn't play their best football, and the Colts took advantage of that. And, I think the Colts won that game because primarily they were the team that made the fewer mistakes, and they still made their fair share of mistakes. Kansas City played woefully on special teams, made a lot of uncharacteristic gaffes in the third phase of the game. That being said, I thought the Colts played terrific on defense. Offensively, they still only scored 20 points, and through three games here, the Colts are only averaging about 13 points per game. They've been shut out once. So just because you won a game doesn't make everything perfect, and they're going to have to continue to get better. They're going to have to find their identity. Certainly, offensively, the pass protection's got to be corrected. I think it's been solid for parts of this season, but then when it's bad, it looks really bad because you got free rushers, and they've allowed 12 sacks and 28 quarterback hits. Matt Ryan's been under duress. He's lost a lot of fumbles, so it's setting up your opponent with short fields. That's what happened to Kansas City on Sunday. They took advantage of those short fields, and to the defense's credit, that's really all they gave up. But yeah, just because you won a football game doesn't mean you can kind of rest on your laurels and stick out your chest and say, we beat Kansas City, everything's fine. Kansas City played down a little bit. The Colts took advantage of those mistakes, got to win at home. But this is a monster game coming up on Sunday against Tennessee. I think still your chief rival in the AFC South. And these two head-to-head matchups are going to go such a long way in deciding who wins the AFC South, just as they have the last couple of seasons. So, yeah, big ramifications coming up on Sunday against the Titans.
I hate to backtrack after a win over Kansas City because there's no doubt that was huge. But I'm going to, yes. I go back to that Jacksonville game, and so one of the things we talked about multiple times, whether it was with you or Bob Kravitz or some other guests, was our concern about the receivers. And in that Jacksonville game, I think Jacksonville's improved, but I didn't think that their defense did anything special that shut down the Colts. Just really when Michael Pittman Jr. was out of that game, nobody at the wide receiver position stepped up. And to me, that's still a little concerning. You've got Jonathan Taylor already at over 60 carries this season. And outside of Naheem Hines, Michael Pittman Jr. has twice as many catches as anybody else on the roster. So I mean, do you still see those concerns at wide receiver through the first three games?
I mean, to a degree, because as you said, against Jacksonville, in his absence, it was hard to find playmaking ability. I think Paris Campbell has played more snaps so far this season than any other wideout, and he only has a couple of catches, was shut out in that Jacksonville game. So it's one of those things where it's been a concern when he wasn't out there and not so much concern when Pittman has played because of the synergy and the cohesion that Matt Ryan has with Michael Pittman Jr. So, yeah, it's one of those problems. You're sort of riding a thin line because you're so dependent on one guy so far, and then when he's not out there, you kind of saw what happened. But I do think that Jacksonville's defense is pretty darn stout. It's not overly exotic, as you said, or complicated, right, but they just executed well, and they've got a bunch of guys on that team. I think they've got playmakers. I really think that might be one of the best front sevens the Colts play all year, and they're going to have to do it again in 2 weeks after Thursday Night Football next week. So yeah, it's going to be. We're going to continue to talk about it until there's no reason to talk about it anymore. And you got Alec Pierce back last week. That was good. I thought some of the young pass catchers last week really kind of stepped up in pockets of the game. The Colts were stacked up at the 1 yard line last week, and then they threw that 30-yard go route down the far sideline to Pierce, and he did what he did in college at Cincinnati, Dustin. You saw it against IU last year, his ability to kind of high point the ball, win contested matchups, contort his body to bring in those tough 50-50 balls. Got the Colts out of the shadow of their own goal line on that play, had a big catch inside the red zone the last drive of the game to set up the Colts in scoring position. And then Jelani Woods, I lump him in with the pass catchers as well. He only played in 8 snaps in the first 2 games of the season. And you're kind of thinking, all right, this guy's a rookie. Where is he going to, be involved in this offense? How's he going to get acclimated? How are they going to use him? And then all of a sudden he goes for 2 touchdowns, 2 catches, both touchdowns, has the game winner. So those 2 guys stepped up. But one is a rookie. The other guy is a rookie tight end. And so he's kind of that third tight end, is not going to have the biggest of roles on a week-to-week basis. So, yes, it is guys like Ashton Dulin, Paris Campbell, Mike Strawn that need to step up in case something happens in the future here with Michael Pittman Jr., because there's no doubt you're riding that fine line with your reliability and your dependence on number 11 and your number 3.
Yeah, and another thing, just what are we going to see from Tennessee this week? Because as you mentioned, this is a huge game for the Colts, a 1-1-1 start, but a little bit disappointing considering the level of what we expected the competition to be in the first 2 games. I think Houston's not good. I think Jacksonville's a lot better. But I think that if you get through this with a win over Tennessee and you start 2-1-1, I think fans start to feel a little bit better about this game. Right. So what challenges does Tennessee present to the Colts heading into this week?
Well, I mean, on offense, I mean, there's still, I think, from a mentality standpoint, from a team or a franchise cultural perspective, they are still ground and pound. They want to be the most physical team in the NFL. They sort of take on the identity of their head coach and Mike Vrabel in that regard. They're going to be tough, gritty, physical, just sort of punch you in the mouth, control both sides of the line of scrimmage. And so really this game just boils down to that. And with it being an AFC South game, and, you've got these 2 head coaches that have been in place, in their respective positions every year since 2018, from a, whatever word you want to call it. I mean, an identity standpoint or, again, I go back to that word culture. Like, you're not going to fool anybody here. Like, there's just not that much that these 2 teams haven't seen from one another over the last 5+ years. So it just comes down to, like, fourth quarter execution, winning special teams. And both of these teams, Frank Reich and Mike Vrabel, these are 2 of the more aggressive play callers and, like go for it guys in the NFL. They go for it routinely on 4th down. They go for it inside the red zone. So situational football is going to be everything in this game. And, you got to stop Derrick Henry first and foremost. But if you look at the Tennessee Titans going into this game, they're not the same team last year, that swept the Colts and won that 34-31 overtime game on Halloween. They're down Taylor Lewan at left tackle. They lost Harold Landry. They traded A.J. Brown in the offseason during the draft. That's huge. That'd be like if the Colts were playing without, Matt Pryor or Anthony Costanzo and Unique Ngakoue, Braden Smith, and Michael Pittman Jr. Like that's huge. So that's a lot of talent and a lot of firepower that they're not going to have. But they're still going to rely on that steel horse of Derrick Henry. But so far this year, he's not the Henry of old. He missed half of last year with a foot injury, came back for the playoffs, but just hasn't been the same guy. And hopefully I continue to be right about that. But so far this year, averaging just 3.6 yards per carry. And the Colts rushing defense is number 1 in the NFL so far through 3 games. So it's sort of strength on strength. And again, I think it just boils down to the trenches, making plays in the fourth quarter, winning inside the red zone. All of these, old adages in football are just going to be so important in this game on Sunday when you have 2 teams that know each other so well. And again, it's, these 2 head-to-head matchups are going to decide, I think, have the biggest role in deciding who wins the AFC South, because I think these 2 teams are going to be there in the end, week 15, 16, 17.